We've got Chris on technical, Neil on insight, and Steve in the driving seat. It's Talking Formula One.
Good evening and welcome to Talking Formula One. Of course, your weekly Formula One pit stop for sort of news, updates, tidbits, opinions, anything and everything in between. We're, of course, 1 week, almost 2 weeks into the summer break. Hope you're all coping well. I'm doing okay, but I am missing hearing the Dutch anthem every Sunday. That became a staple of my weekend. Obviously, we're here this week for about half an hour just to sort of pick up where we left off last week. Really, we were breaking down the team's performances. We've also got another little interesting thing to talk about as well, which obviously we welcome all of your opinions for. Evening, Mike Baker. Welcome in, my friend. Hope you are well. We have no Neil this week. He's actually let us know this week that he's not going to be here. I know. Sit down. I'm shocked as well. But obviously, I say every week, as much as I can talk about Formula One to myself, and I often do, because no one around me listens. I can't do this show by myself or without you guys as well. But please join me in welcoming the co-host, Chris.
And the man that's got a degree in F1, the wise owl, Chris Lambert.
Austria's an old school circuit. If you go off, you're off.
If you go off, you're off. Evening, Chris. You right?
Yeah, evening, you're right.
Yeah, not too bad yourself.
Yeah, struggling through the week.
Yeah, not one of those. I like your Aston Martin team were there.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
nice.
What Alonso one. Yeah.
Yeah, is that picked up in Belgium?
No. I've had it a while. Just happy to be wearing it this afternoon. Actually, I didn't. It wasn't by design.
Oh, this is the first appearance on the show. I should be wearing my Williams stuff as well. There you go. Bit of a Mercedes customer off. There we go. Anyway, we have no Neil this week, so it's just down to obviously myself and yours. Yours truly. So my voice just stopped working there for some reason. So there we go. We'll pick up where we left off last week. Of course, last week we were rating the Formula One teams and their performances. Martin says, "How's the footwear, Chris? How was your footwear?"
Oh yeah, we're all right. The trench foot, I think he's going on about.
Oh yeah, the old Belgian.
Oh, I don't think I said in the need to get my footwear dry. Neil brought some camping stoves, which obviously we use to eat peat food, but we decided to use them to dry our footwear or socks. And as I was drying one shoe, one stove, Neil was drying the other, but he got a bit too close to the flame and singed the mesh off my whole bike.
Oh no!
So my very porous trainer became even more porous by the fact that it had no mesh.
Oh, fantastic. Good old Neil. That's why he's not here. He's ashamed to show his face now.
I still got swearing.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Neil will also be back next week as well when you stop feeling guilty. Right. Well, last week we were obviously focusing, because it's been quite a quiet week, I think, in F1 news. There's not really been any breaking news or any silly season rumours or results coming out. So we might as well pick up where we left off. We were, of course, breaking down the 10 teams' half-term performances. We got to Williams. We covered AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas, and Williams. I think we were unanimously agreed on the fact that Williams are doing a fantastic job considering where they've been for the past few seasons. In sixth place currently, and they might think it's a bit of a disappointment. I kind of agree. It's Alpine with 57 points. They slipped from fourth in the Constructors last year to sixth this year. What do you make of their season so far?
Underwhelming is probably the word I'd use. They're nowhere near where they expect to be. Nowhere near where anybody really expects them to be. They're track dependent, I think. Especially they're decent in qualifying race. Like a lot, actually, to be fair, a lot of teams is qualifying. They manage to get the better results, but come race day Sunday, they're a bit.
Yeah, it sort of disappeared, didn't they? Yeah, they had a decent podium with Ocon in Monaco. Gasly picked up, was it third in the sprint race in Belgium?
That was their straight line speed, which is they've always sort of had, and the fact that the Mercs behind don't tend to. Well, I don't know about Mercedes, but they'll never be able to overtake an Alpine for some weird reason.
The Alpine is quick in a straight line. That's why I was quite surprised when obviously the conditions were tricky in Monaco. Ocon picking up that pretty solid third place, and it's not been as unreliable as last year. Last year they had quite a lot of engine issues with double DNF, I think, in Singapore as well. It's been a bit better this year, but I still think they'll be disappointed, especially with two drivers that are quite highly rated in Ocon and Gasly. to be sitting in sixth, but they're in that sort of awkward position where they're not close to fifth. You know, they're quite a way off fifth, but they've got a bit of a cushion to Williams in seventh. So they're in a bit of no man's land, really. Sort of very much in the midfield.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting second half of the season because you assume with the new hierarchy they've got in that they will be looking at next season. So this season is effectively a write-off now. So, and how long does that new hierarchy take to implement what the direction they want to go? Because I was thinking about this the other day, actually, that if you look at the Alpine, you don't really know what car it is. It's not a Red Bull. It's not a Mercedes. It's not a Ferrari. It's sort of like a mishmash of things. You can't go, oh, like when the Aston Martin brought out the Red Bull, the green Red Bull, or McLaren have got Red Bull, or you got Ferrari and Haas that look very similar.
Yeah.
You can't really go with the Alpine and go, that looks like that.
No, they're in their own little world, really, aren't they, with car design?
Like Mercedes, but Mercedes have done a better job of it.
But more successful, or less successful than Mercedes. Well, remains to be seen how they get on, of course, in the remainder of the season. Hopefully, they'll pick up a few more solid points. But like we said, they're a long way off fifth place because the fifth place team, Alpine, have got 57. The next team have got 103, and that is McLaren, who occupy fifth place. Started very, very badly and got better. Got very good.
One big upgrade, wasn't it?
Yeah. And out of nowhere, they are suddenly challenging for the podium in Silverstone. Was it Austria as well? Is it Austria?
Yeah.
The podium? Yeah.
They're the second best team. Oh, didn't rate Alpine's performance.
Oh, yeah.
3 out of 10.
I agree. To be honest, I go 4 at a push, mainly because of Gasly's good result in the sprint and then Ocon in Monaco.
Ocon and Gasly are pretty similar in the standings, so that kind of tells you where the car's at.
Yeah, you've not got one driver that's completely wiping the floor with his teammate. It's a very midfield car, isn't it?
Yeah.
McLaren seem to be making that push from the midfield up to the big leagues now. 103 points, so they've got a clear buffer over sixth place. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri doing a solid job.
I think what has been the key is that they realised early in, I think it was January, I think they might have realised it, that this year's car they built was miles off. And they took the decision early to go down the Red Bull route. And I think the Monaco pictures of the floor really helped that. But I think that the fact that they saw on the wind tunnel on the programs, especially pre-season testing, that they were slow, draggy.
Yeah.
That they automatically, effectively, started on a B spec.
Yeah.
And
it was
paid off.
It was terrible, wasn't it? I remember watching the race in Bahrain, and was it Piastri was out fairly early on with an issue. Norris kept coming in because he had a mechanical problem. They kept having to top his car. Was it top his car up with air? Am I right in thinking that? Yeah.
Or hydraulic failure or something that was happening.
And everyone's thinking that, okay, maybe Piastri's not done a good thing here by signing for McLaren. But I think he's certainly hushed those critics because he is doing a fantastic job now.
All help with a good car.
Yeah, but he's taken the fight to Lando. He's unfortunate maybe to not have had his first podium. That safety car in Silverstone sort of robbed him of that chance, really.
Key for McLaren to get two similar drivers. I think what has hindered them with Ricciardo and Norris was that they're two completely opposite driving styles. And you're trying to build a car which is trying to complement both driver styles. You create a terrible car.
Yeah.
You can't. You'll never get it right. So you need to either create it with front end or rear end, instability or whatever. So having two drivers that have very similar driving styles makes it easy to design the car because you know which direction you need to go in for your drivers.
Yeah. Well, they're in fifth, 103 points. They were fighting for basically the same sort of position last year, except with Alpine. Out of 10, what would you give them?
It's a difficult one, really.
Because we're not just basing them on the past couple of races, are we?
3 races is 9 out of 10. I mean, they couldn't effectively really. But Piastri was bad luck. They may have gone wrong setup for the race at Spa. But bar that, they've had pretty flawless Grand Prix. But if you take it overall, I'd probably have to go 6.5 because they turned up with an absolute dog at the start of the season.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You've got to base it on season-wide results, not just what's happened in recent weeks. So, yeah, I think a 6.5 is pretty bang on. For the most part of the season, it's been pretty average, but the past few races, they've really started to come into their own. They are now obviously starting to challenge the sort of the bigger teams at the front. It still sounds weird not describing McLaren as one of the bigger teams. But, yeah, we shall see sort of how they get on the rest of the season. Fourth place. I'm disappointed. They'll be disappointed, especially after how last year was going for them, certainly early part of last season. 191 points. It's Ferrari. It's the Scuderia. What happened?
No wins, hardly any podiums.
2 podiums this year. None for Carlos. I think 2 for Leclerc. 2 or 3 maybe.
Carlos has had some rotten luck, really.
Yeah.
The more I watch back that turn 1 incident with Piastri, the more I think that Carlos was turning in on purpose. But we'll go with that. But in terms of Ferrari, yeah, as we've been over before, you don't know what direction they're taking the car.
No.
What their plans with the car. You don't hear anything about development. What they're trying to do. They've got their own style of what car with the sort of scallop side pods and things. Are they going to next year continue with that? Are everybody going to turn up with a Red Bull? In all honesty, why wouldn't you turn up with a Red Bull?
Yeah, I was going to say more teams are sort of leaning towards that way now. Obviously, we're seeing teams further down the grid. They're picking up more of this Red Bull design and this sort of little tendencies of the Red Bull. Ferrari have stuck to their guns with their design. It was obviously very, very fast last year, very, very fragile. This year, it's not as fragile, but it's not as fast.
So it must be when they raised the cars. They had porpoising, which they managed to put up with, but the car was quick.
Yeah.
And as soon as they had to raise the car, they lost all speed.
Well, Fred Vasseur was saying that they try something in the wind tunnel and then they do it on the track and then they just get porpoising. You don't hear that word very much now. So they had to raise the car up, and obviously then you lose that performance. So they are probably one of the very few teams, if not the only team, maybe, that really stick out that is struggling with porpoising.
I'd say every Friday they porpoise. And then they sort of dial it out by come Saturday. Or sometimes they don't bother. But I find it very strange. Obviously, in the wind tunnel, it's different. You can test the flow of the air, but that's pretty much it. You haven't got all the outside conditions, your wind directions, and all that sort of stuff. So it's difficult to really grasp it.
Some pole positions. Sorry?
It's strange how they're the only team that are still consistently porpoising. Obviously,
yeah. And they've got 2 pole positions, one of which was Charles Leclerc brilliance, to be fair, in Baku, just dragging lap time out of that car. He is a qualifying specialist. The other one obviously wasn't really a pole, it was a Max Verstappen penalty, but still to get that car in second place on the grid, very, very good. The upsetting statistic is, of course, that Max Verstappen has more race wins from Charles Leclerc poles than Charles Leclerc does. His pole to win ratio is really not good. Poor Charles.
It's a qualifying car in that Ferrari.
Yeah.
Often enough, Leclerc does drag out. I mean, he finished third at the Spa Grand Prix, which was a good result. I think they brought an upgrade in to try and get away from the degradation of the tyres so much, which I hope it would work, really, because we need more people up there. The more you get, the more better chance you have of Verstappen not winning. But
yeah,
it always has been a very quality dominant car because they can switch the tyres. Then leads to higher degrading in the race.
Yeah, that's the similar thing we spoke last week about the Haas as well. They're qualifying, well, certainly Hülkenberg is qualifying in great places because, like the Ferrari, switches on the tyres, but then it just cooks them in the race. Yes. The thing with Ferrari, though, is they're not far off third place, which we move on to. Oh, out of 10, Ferrari season? Excuse me.
Got to be... I'm going to be harsh 4.
I was going to say 3 or 4, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
Because
it's exceptionally... From where they were this time last year, it's exceptionally disappointing.
It is terrible. One true pole position, 2 or 3 podiums from one driver. and just slow. Third place, they're 5 points clear. Came out of nowhere, really. Big surprise. 196 points, Aston Martin. Everyone's saying last year when Alonso announced he was joining what was the 9th fastest team, leaving Alpine, who obviously were hunting for 4th, that he was a bit mad and he'd made yet another poor career choice, of which he has made a few. No, he's done all right, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could argue that they always say it's easy to copy the car, it's harder to develop a car.
Mm.
And at the minute, it looks like they've copied the Red Bull in terms of a lot of the things, but haven't been able to, like how Red Bull obviously made evolutions on their car. Aston Martin are struggling with the next step. The step they brought in, where did they bring it? Canada, was it? I think.
Yes. Yeah.
They expected to be closer to Red Bull, and actually they're further away.
You can see that the drop off, isn't it? Because Alonso was saying, "Oh, this is the last race without a podium in Spain, maybe." He's had 1 podium since then. So in the opening 6 races, he had 5 podiums, and then just 1 in the last 6.
The clearly showing the development race that they have completely. They've not gone forward at all. Again, though, Mike Crack was saying that it was the wind tunnel showing them results, which seems to be a very common theme with this type of car. This iteration of car is that the wind tunnel is not showing. Well, the car on track isn't showing what the wind tunnel is telling them. Like the W12 was pretty much the W12 last year. Yeah, W12 last year. Pretty much was rapid in the wind tunnel. That was the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah,
and it up and it was bouncing all over the place and a second off the pace.
And one thing I think, or one aspect which I believe is hurting Aston Martin more, is the second driver. Fernando Alonso, like we said, he's 6 podiums this year. He's been on the podium in half the races this year.
Yeah, one thing you can always guarantee with Alonso is he'll drag that car to its best position.
Yeah,
whereas
absolutely.
Alonso, you can guarantee he'll drag that car to nowhere.
Yeah, he is. I'm looking at the results this year, and I know obviously development is a big part of it, and how far away Red Bull are, and
they've blamed his accident in pre-season as well. Obviously, his accident as a big thing. We're now August, so we're good 5 months from that accident now. Yeah,
and Alonso 6 podiums in 12. Lance Stroll has only finished in the top 5 once, which is a 4th place in Australia, because of all the carnage that happened there. So it's been a disappointing season. Alonso is still sitting 3rd in the championship, his best result for a long time. That elusive 33rd win does seem to be slipping away somewhat. But I still think they'll be happy with their overall performance.
I don't think it will come this year. I think that they've been outdeveloped now. They need an exceptional race, like when Ocon won in Hungary. That sort of time where you're at a circuit you can't overtake, and you found yourself in the lead. Maybe Singapore or something like that. But I don't think this year. I think the ship sailed on that one.
It's unfortunate. I was so hyped up for seeing an Alonso win, but Red Bull are just so far ahead, and Aston have slipped. They've slipped 2/3. They obviously were 2nd for a large portion of the season.
For the first 7 or 8 races, they were in prime position. If Verstappen had a failure or Perez had a failure, they would have won the race. But unfortunately, the Red Bull's bulletproof.
They may have won it in Monaco had they not messed up strategy with tyres. It's a lot of what ifs, isn't it? So I think the focus for them has to be next year now and really developing that car. But I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give them an 8, to be honest.
This is the opposite to the McLaren, isn't it? Really, you're kind of over the whole season. I would say because we didn't know expected in January that they would be 3rd in the constructors. So 8 out of 10 for the whole year. Probably a 3 out of 10 since Austria.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely agree. Yeah, I think the 8 out of 10 it's a solid result because of that. Yeah, that start was phenomenal, and they made that car very, very well. Just need Stroll to put his finger up. Second place, 247 points, is Mercedes. George Russell, Lewis Hamilton. It's another tricky car. Another tricky car. It has flashes of brilliance. Hamilton got pole in Hungary. They've had some podiums. Hamilton's had the lion's share of the results, really. To be honest, he's whitewashing George Russell this year. Russell's only had one podium. And I know that the Red Bulls usually are so far ahead that first and second you'd expect to be filled, but Perez has been so hit and miss. And Russell's still not really been around there. So I think Mercedes can be, I don't want to say fairly happy, but if you're Mercedes, you're not going to be, because you're used to dominating, and now, you can't even get on the podium in most races.
I find with Russell, it's an interesting one, because he's Mr. Saturday, obviously, when he was at Williams. That Mercedes isn't a great qualifying car. It's a race car, which nullifies Russell a little bit, because part of his bag is he'll qualify as far as he can, and then will defend it in the race. He's a solid race driver, very good quality 1/1 lap, and that's, I think, where his downfall slightly has been this season. And that car is that he can't get it in right in qualifying. He can't get the tyres in the right window. He seems to always. I was reading an article about him always choosing an opposite setup to Lewis.
Okay.
And how they always go different ways. And I was thinking to myself, why would you not lean on a 7-time world champion, 8-time world champion?
Let's not.
Info and knowledge, especially on the Mercedes car. I know it's a different car, but you know what I mean. But instead, you're trying to find, that sort of weird setup that everybody goes, oh, that worked, happy days. But most of the time, it's not working at the minute. No,
you'd think, if you're gonna entrust one of them to set up your car for you, it would be Lewis. Look at the success he's had with Mercedes, obviously McLaren previously.
And also, George sets his cars up for the race.
Yeah, it's all well and good setting them up in quali, but you're just going to fall away in the race. The cars around you are so much faster. That Red Bull you're never going to catch. The Ferrari shows flashes of pace. The Aston still has it. The McLarens obviously are now, they have been the second best team.
But then he tries to manage his own strategy in the race as well. You obviously get when you compare it to Lewis. Lewis questions it. I think we know this a couple of weeks ago. Questions the team, but goes by what they say. Whereas George is always saying, no, we should do this. I think we should do this. We stay out there, and at the end of the day, sometimes it's right, but a lot of times it's not going to be. And this season, especially, the luck's not been with him in that terms. Spa is waiting for a safety car. That's why he held out so long, and things like that. So I don't know if it's not inexperience. He's his fifth year, is it? Or fifth year now in F1.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not inexperience. I think it's just him trying to find the best way to beat Lewis. And I don't. Sometimes if you can't beat him, join him.
Yeah, absolutely. Carlos is the same when he's trying to call out strategies as well.
Yeah, if he thinks he's a better driver than Lewis, go down the same route as Lewis on setup and improve it. Because the way Russell's setting up the car isn't working, is it? And plus Lewis, I think, Lewis has got something he can fight for in the podiums and possibly be there when a Red Bull breaks down to win a Grand Prix. He's got his mojo back. He's quick.
Yeah,
I do generally think, from what the murmurs from Lewis and the length of time it's taken him to sign his contract, I think that Mercedes will look more Red Bullish next year. I think he's adamant it's got to go that direction.
There's a lot of surprise that he hasn't signed that contract yet. And Toto Wolff seems to be getting a bit more vague with it as well. I think it's only a matter of time.
He's doing interviews, isn't he? He goes, we know which direction we should go in. We see it. And things like that. It's pretty obvious that he wants to go down that Red Bull route because it worked.
It must take a lot of pride swallowing for Mercedes to, for having dominated the sport for the best part of a decade, to then copying one of your rivals and the people who took that crown off you, to then go, all right, our concept isn't working. You've got no other option. But they have no other option unless something drastic really happens with that concept. No car that doesn't look like a Red Bull is going to win a race.
They've I wouldn't say ditched the side pods, but they've obviously gone away from the no side pods. That was only, I think that was because they wanted to see what the car was like with side pods, because they didn't. I think it was James Allison said that they didn't want to die trying, didn't want to die not knowing what it was like with side pods.
Yeah,
but it's certainly not hindered performance.
No, not at all.
And I think it's actually made it more stable in the corners.
Results have improved.
So I genuinely, I'll be very surprised if I don't think Mercedes will copy Red Bull. I think it's not in their nature. I generally feel like it'll be on the very downwash side pods.
Yeah,
big lip on the inlet. That sort of mould. I would be very surprised if it doesn't look like that next season.
Same. In terms of a scale of 1 to 10 for their season, what do you reckon?
7, solid. Second best team now. Done what Mercedes have always done, which is develop the car well during the season. They've not fallen off, not fallen behind. They've put lap time in the car, and they've still got a few things they need to iron out. So 7 for me.
I agree. I was going to go for 6, pushing a 7. I think a 7 is solid. You know, they've obviously not got back to the winning ways they wanted to, but they're solid. Hamilton has picked up a pole, so he's already beaten his last season when he didn't get a win or a pole. We'll basically see whether he can get a win. It's going to take a lot, but it's Hamilton. You never know. He's managed to get dogs of cars to win races. The 09 McLaren always sticks in my mind. That brings us to, we've got a few minutes left. That brings us to our top team. They are Mercedes are on 247. Red Bull are 503. They have won every race this season. 10 for Verstappen, 2 for Sergio Perez.
300.
It is. So look at the driver's standing. So yeah, Verstappen has 314 points. He has scored more than Mercedes, which is just incredible. We are witnessing greatness, I think, with this combination.
More Mercedes, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas, Williams.
I think we are witnessing greatness with this. Whether you're a Verstappen fan or not, this combination of car and driver is insane. It's even more unbeatable than the Vettel Red Bull era.
Yeah, it's mad. They are a 10 out of 10. You can't knock one single thing. There is nothing. I mean, you can't get a better season than winning every single race and sprint race possible.
No, that's it. It's incredible. I'm interested to see how many 1-2s they've actually got. Because I don't think
you could knock them down half a point for Perez's performances here and there, but that's not the team, is it? We're rating the team. It's 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. That car is perfect. Newey has delivered a blinder there, and all of the team who are developing and working on that car have developed a blinder. They've got one of the best drivers on the grid in that car as well, and Max Verstappen. Obviously, Perez is there as well. But interesting, they have only got 5 1-2s, which is surprising because of how dominant that car is. But it's obviously, it's Sergio Perez who has failed to really deliver what that car can do, certainly in qualifying.
Yeah.
But it's straight away, it's got to be a 10 out of 10, isn't it?
They've not had a single mechanical failure.
No, they have finished every single race, both cars, in the points in every race apart from Checo missed out in Monaco, 16th, because he stuffed it in quali. And that's when the season fell away.
Sprint race at Spa, but he's only a sprint race. That was only because Lewis took a bite out of his sideboard. But
he did. But, oh my God, it was 8 victories in a row for Max Verstappen. 1 more and he equals Seb's records from 2013. He'll beat that.
The ironic thing is that I remember that in 2013, I really got bored of F1 then. Really got bored. But actually, I don't mind it still. I mean, when you watch the race, you discard first and you watch from second to 20, and it's a decent race from there. So
yeah, you shouldn't be like that. It should be like you should be watching a battle for first. That's amazing. That's what everyone wants to see, but that's not going to happen. But yeah, I see what you mean. But I mean, back in 2013, obviously that Red Bull was incredible. Sebastian Vettel was at his peak. He was incredible. And it was another genius from Adrian Newey.
Yeah.
But I did find it more boring. But yeah, this time, because you've got this battle from second downwards, you've got your races where Ferrari is second, Mercedes is second, McLaren, Aston, all these other teams are now in the mix. And although they're so far behind Red Bull, next year, who knows? But you've got all these other teams, and the midfield is packed as well. You've got the likes of Williams are dragging themselves up. Haas turn up occasionally, Alfa Romeo turn up again, and it's all these teams are fighting. There's not one team stranded at the back. So it's, apart from the top two, the grid is actually really intriguing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Red Bull season, it's a 10 out of 10. Like you said, there's no mechanical DNFs there. There's no
there's not even mistakes at pit stops or even strategy mistakes, really.
No.
As a team, they've just done everything
right. It is. They are. No team has won every race this season, have they? McLaren came close, I think, in the late 80s with the MP44 or MP45.
Yeah.
With the Prost and Senna era. But no team has done it. But
it's a DNF, isn't it? It's a DNF that's stopping it. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not on the track being beaten by a better car, is it?
No. This is that's the thing as well. It's like no one's going to beat it in a race. It's just got to be. You've got to wait for Perez to do as usual, or a DNF. But that car, it's not even fast, but fragile. It's fast and bulletproof.
I think they took a fourth gearbox out of pity, I think.
Yeah. We'll start sixth. Oh, we're leading. Never mind. We'll see you after the summer break.
I generally think that was it. I think they just thought, wow, starting sixth would still win the race.
Oh yeah,
they saw something in the gearbox that could be a gremlin, and they just changed it because it didn't. If that was 2021, I don't think they would have changed it.
No, not at all. But yeah, and like you say, the team itself are working so well. So the strategy department are on it. The pit stops, they are fantastic. If someone comes into the pits, if it's like Verstappen leading, and I'm going, come on, mess it up, just mess it up so someone can get back into it. And they never do. It's always like smooth as silk on every aspect.
You watch quali and you think Verstappen, he questioned the other day about, well, we should have done 2 push laps, blah, blah, but what they did was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apart from Perez's individual performance, I can't fault them at all. The thing I'm finding fantastic now is listening to the little comments between Max Verstappen and his race engineer.
That's the only time it's worth listening to Red Bull.
Sorry, carry on.
No, it's just them just out front and just saying, how are you? Yeah, I'm all right, cheers.
Yeah, you still awake? Yeah. The thing I found brilliant was back in Canada when George hit that curb and binned it into the barrier and Verstappen did it. It was like, whoa, almost knocked myself out there. Anyway, carry on. He's that far in the lead, as for God's sake. He's laughing about almost binning it. Jesus Christ. But it's a solid 10, isn't it? So we've had a good, obviously, combining last week's rankings and this week, we've had a solid range of 1 to 10s. Obviously, we're out of time for this week, but next week we're back with Neil as well. We can then look at what we were going to originally discuss this week about which team has the best driver lineup and which team has the worst, which is going to take some deliberating. It's going to be very, very tough. I'm assuming we're going on the post-AlphaTauri change rather than the pre-AlphaTauri change. Or do we take it all into consideration?
We'll take it as all in consideration.
Considering he has done obviously most of the season. Right, well, we are, of course, out of time for this week. So thank you very much for watching. We hope you did enjoy. We'll see you next week. We're back at the usual time on the usual day, Wednesday at 7:15, where we will be going over, as we said, the best and worst driver lineups. We want to get involved for that. So give it a think over the next week. And then if we get any fantastic F1 news, like Hamilton does sign a new deal or, Williams are confident about a race-winning upgrade they're going to bring, then obviously we shall bring it to you. So until then, I've been Steve. He has been Chris. Neil is somewhere in the ether. So we shall see you next week. Have a great week. Toodaloo.